Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Samra and this is a very late June wrap-up. I read a total of 6 books in the month of June. That's not a lot, I know, but I did enjoy many of these books, so quality-wise, it was a really good month, but quantity, I could have done better, but it couldn't be helped. So the first book I finished was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. At the beginning of the month, I was really in the mood for reading some romance and I dived right into that book and it was the first thing I finished. So this book is about Chloe Brown, a chronically ill computer geek. One day she has a near-death experience and that pushes her to come up with a list and a plan to get herself a life. I went into this book having high expectations because I read so many great reviews about it. I thought it was going to be great. The synopsis was very intriguing, and I'm happy to tell you the book delivered. This one was a solid 4 stars read for me. Get a Life, Chloe Brown is such a cute read. I really do enjoy romance books that venture a little bit off the well-trodden path, you know. This is one of those. The main character is a very perfect representation of chronic illness and chronic pains. It was my very first encounter with this kind of illness. I heard about it, but I didn't feel it that much. And this book did a very well job of representing that kind of situation for me. This book reminded me how much unnecessary judgment we see in everyday life, how much we do it ourselves. Chloe, who suffers from chronic pain and fatigue, decides to get herself a life. She has a list, but you'd be surprised, this book is not about the list. It's not about the items on that list. This is about her courage and her will to live and be happy in her own life. You know, to let her walls down and be vulnerable and live her life to the fullest. This book is about that. Chloe is strong and resilient. She's proud, she's witty, and every little bit of her is worthy of love. I really love this book. I really loved the character of Chloe, and I really loved her journey. Now, the love interest, Red, short for Redford, is a very surprising character. Going into this book, I didn't expect to like Red at all. He was not my type. I was like, I'm just reading it for the trope, not for the guy, not for the type of guy he is. And I was wrong. I was pleasantly surprised. Red was one of the best male characters I read recently in romance books because he's vulnerable, he's emotionally intelligent, and that is very attractive. There's no beating that. I did love their dynamics. I did love their banter, their relationship growing into something more. I really love witnessing that. It's very enjoyable. It's really amazing to see how these two very different people put down their walls, put down their guards, and take a leap of faith. I do plan to read the other 2 books later. Maybe I put a few months in between, but I will read them definitely. The next book I finished was Fourth Wing by Yaros. When I picked that book up to read, I was like, finally, I'm gonna see what this is about. The story is about 20-year-old Violet Sorrengill, who wants to become a scribe, but her mother, the general, the commander, forces her to attend this college for dragon riders. So she has to go there, compete, and it's a very brutal place. The death rates are very high, and she has to survive to the end and be chosen by a dragon. That's the main plot of the story. So as you might know, this book was very hyped up. I was very curious to see if it's worth it. When I finished the book, I gave it 4 stars, but right now, as 1 month has passed, it's more of a 3.5, but I'm not gonna lower my original rating because I enjoyed it back then very much and I gave it a 4, so it's gonna stay a 4. So this book is a fun fantasy read with dragons, with talking dragons, and enough romance to keep you, interested. The fantasy tropes that we like are there. There's enemy to lovers, found family, sort of, talking dragons, an interesting enough magic system, magical threats, and a potentially powerful main character who has no idea how powerful she is. So if you like those kind of tropes, you will probably enjoy this book, but there are other things. It's worth mentioning that Fourth Wing does follow the formula for hyped up romanticities very well. For example, I had so much fun reading the book that I almost didn't mind the shortcomings. But it is a very engaging read. There are good parts and there are some not very good parts. It does remind me of Divergent. The vibes, the fightings and the classes, it does remind you of that kind of vibe, but it's still different. The magic system is Fourth Wing is very interesting. It has potential. Unfortunately, at least in the first book, it's not developed that much. Maybe it will in the future, but it is an interesting enough magic system to keep us occupied. But the highlight of this book for me were the dragons. I think I already fangirled about the dragons too much, but bear with me, I'm gonna do it a bit more. The dragon elements work perfectly fine for me. I mean, there's a mental bond between the dragger and the writer, and they hear each other's thoughts. They're constantly talking in their heads, and a certain dragon is very grumpy, is very lovable. I love that dragon, and it was the main reason I enjoyed this book as much as I did. Not the story, not the plot, not the romance, just the dragon. I'd say 80% of why I enjoyed this book were the dragons. But that aside, romance was also good. It had all the right elements. It was interesting. Zayden as a love interest, he's the kind of guy you want to see in romance fantasies. I mean, he has everything you want to see. It helps that he's not very toxic. I know he has bad traits, but he's a supportive male character, and that's always good. But to tell you the truth, romance does get a bit repetitive towards the end, just towards the end, but that was okay. But guys, I had some issues with this book that pushed me to lower the rating, and I have to mention them because they're there. It's fair to say it. One of the main problems is that this book lacks word building. In epic fantasy, we need good word building. I'm not saying it wasn't done. Maybe it wasn't done very well. That I kept feeling it, especially in the beginning, but also the logic of the society and the death rates didn't make sense to me. I kept waiting, to be handed over the reason for that, something I could believe. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but it still doesn't annoy you that much if you don't focus on it, because it's a very fun read. If you don't focus on that, if you kind of let it go, you can still enjoy the book. I did enjoy the book. I gave it 4 stars. This book has been loved by many already, so it's not a bad book. It's good, but it's not the perfect version of fantasy you might imagine in your head. It's not that. But overall, the whole package still works somehow. And I will definitely read the second book once it comes out, because this book has something that, I was happy and giddy for 2-3 days while I was reading this book, and that's enough for me. Maybe it's not one of my all-time favorite fantasies, but it's good. Okay, the third book I finished in the month of June was, of course, The Hero of Ages, Book 3, and final book in the Mistborn Trilogy Era 1, written by Brandon Sanderson. Reviewing final books in trilogies without spoiling anything is kind of a tough job. I don't know how to do that, but I'm gonna stick to my feelings and how the book made me feel. The Hero of Ages was the perfect ending to a very well-crafted trilogy. I love this book from the first page to the last. It is still on the slower side in fantasy books. You have to be patient. At this point, I kind of get it that to enjoy Sanderson's books, you have to be patient. You have to, be there for the process of the book. That kind of made the experience so much better for me. The fact that it was slow. This is a solid 5-star reads for me. I struggled. I wanted to give it 4.5 because of specific some things, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. I have 0 complaints about the character arcs in this story. Every single character we met in Mistborn Trilogy traveled their own journey and got to some place they were destined to get. I have no complaint about the character developments. It was perfect. The core of the plot is something very simple, but it is developed into an intricate, mysterious, and awfully engaging storyline. Now, I've already talked about the magic system in the Mistborn Trilogy so much. It is so good that I don't know how to explain. It is by far the best magic system I've ever read. I mean, when I get to read all of the books Sanderson has written, I might, say there is a better magic system somewhere else. But right now, from what I read so far in all my life, the magic system Sanderson brings is perfect. It is a magic system, but at the same time, it's very logical and it's very witty. And the fact that he's taken so much time to, develop it into what it is today, I really love that. I enjoyed reading about the magic in this book so much. It's definitely his own brand of magic. At no time in the story, the battle scenes and the magic scenes get repetitive and boring. There's always something new added to the mix that will keep you engaged, that will keep you following each push and pull they do. It's just amazing. And your brain has to be present there all the time because it's worth it. You can't just do something else and listen to the battle scene. You have to stop, freeze, and just listen and be there to analyze everything that's happening, in order to not to miss anything. Or at least that's what I did. The villains are also well crafted and well planned. I could have had more of them. I mean, I always want more when it comes to villains. I always want to know more about them, but this much that we got, it was still very good. I was still satisfied. Oh, and about the notes at the beginning of every chapter, to me, those notes were a crucial part of the story. I mean, when Sanderson chose to give us that bit of information mattered so much. And at the beginning of each chapter, I read and reread the top note to see what is he giving away at this point. And he never gives away too much. He hands you over the exact amount of what you need to know at that specific moment. And I thought that was very clever. One thing that puts Sanderson apart from other fantasy writers for me is his plot reveals. I'm not saying it's very twisty. It is not. The plot reveals are planned very well, and it's obvious, you can feel it. They're planned very well, then that when you get to that point, when it is revealed to you, you kind of freeze, think, realize it's been there all along, and you didn't see it. Sanderson does give away the perfect amount of information, but he does it in a way that you dismiss it the first time you see it. You don't even think about it. It's there. I know there's something's going to be attached to that plot line, but you kind of dismiss it because he doesn't talk about it much. It's just there. He doesn't bring much attention to it. At the end, when it's revealed to you, you're like, oh my God, how did I not see that? It was there. And I know I'm not an expert at this. I mean, many people might see everything coming their way because they're very well read in the genre. I didn't see it. He deceived me and I loved it. And I am looking forward to be deceived again by him in everything he writes. I really love that part. But of course, we have to talk about the ending. The ending was thrilling, exciting, tragic, and perfect. I was so conflicted about that ending. It was brutal. It was like I was hit very hard, and I didn't even have enough time to deal with it. I didn't have enough time to piece myself back together because the story had to go on. We were in the middle of everything and the story had to go on. It hurt. I hated it and I loved it. I know that must be weird, but at the end of the day, there's not one single thing I would have changed about it. It was perfect just the way it was done. And the Hero of Ages couldn't have ended in a better way. I mean, I can't recommend it more. It's Mistborn. It's very famous. If you're into the genre, you should read it. And I would give solid 5 stars to all the 3 books in this trilogy. The next book I finished was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is another solid 4 stars for me. This book felt good. I read it very slowly, even though it's a very short one. It's not even 200 pages, but I read this book very slowly. I took my time enjoying it bit by bit. Legends and Lattes is described as high fantasy with low stakes, and that is true. It's about Weave, a battle-weary orc who wants to do something new with her life, who wants to, choose a different path for herself. Pick it up when you feel like reading something cozy, low stakes, with warm, fuzzy feelings. It's perfect for that. I loved our main character, Weave. We see the whole story from her point of view, and we follow Weave as she meets new people, makes new bonds, and pursues her own dream, and that's very enjoyable. I absolutely adored how we're introduced to each new character in this book and how they're all from the less talked about races in the fantasy genre. I love that. Travis Baldree broke the cliches regarding certain races, and I really love it when authors do that. It's very well done here. One of the first ones we're introduced is Cal. He's downright awesome. The way Baldree portrays his character and all of their characters, but Cal specifically is very nice. Baldree is also very supportive, very talented, and very mysterious. I actually had problems with that because this is a low-stakes fantasy book, and I kept telling myself, what is the mystery behind Baldree? And I did have to keep reminding myself that no, this is not one of those books. Don't get suspicious or dig too deep. This is not that kind of book. And of course, my favorite, Thimble. The most precious character in this book is Thimble. You're gonna meet him. He's amazing. I was rooting for these characters and their dream and their cafe every step of the way. There's something very enjoyable in watching the menu get expanded as the story progresses. It's a very warm, cozy feeling that you have to experience for yourself. I really recommend it. And of course, be warned, this book is gonna make you hungry. You're gonna crave cinnamon rolls. I've been craving them for weeks now. So have that in mind. Overall, this is a very nice slice of life high fantasy. I haven't read anything like this before, but I really enjoyed it. Even though I'm not used to this style of fantasy, I still enjoyed it a lot. I still enjoyed the characters, and there are illustrations at the beginning of each chapter, which adds to the cuteness of this story. I do recommend it. It's a very good book. Check it out. Next, I finished One Piece Volume 3 by Eiichiro Oda. This one picked back up. I gave it 4 stars. We're introduced to another character, Usopp, which I think is going to be one of the main ones. I'm not sure, but I think he will be. I really loved his introduction. It was very funny. I miss that kind of feeling in manga. You know, when you read Japanese manga or when you watch Japanese anime, you kind of get familiar with the Japanese language as well. You know, with their specific words and actions that kind of make the anime or the manga much more funnier. I'm beginning to see these things through the translation, and I really like that. I thought it's not going to be there, but it is, and that kind of adds to the enjoyment of Japanese manga for me a lot, because I keep hearing them in my head because I used to watch Japanese anime all the time before. And I already started on this 4th volume, and I think I'm going to be faster from now on. And the last book I finished in the month of June was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. So Mika Moon is one of the few witches in Britain. She has to hide her magic, she has to hide her identity from the world, and she does, she follows the rules, but she has this online account where she pretends to be a witch, you know, just to have that one connection with herself in the real world. One day she gets a message that asks her to come to this house, it's called Nowhere House, to teach 3 young witches how to use their power, how to control their power. She has her doubts, but eventually she goes there and she meets this very unusual family there. And what she finds in that house is not at all what she expected before. First of all, this story is so cute. I really love the idea of the story very early on. Mika is an isolated witch, and now it seems she's about to find her own people. I couldn't help but root for Mika. The diverse cast of characters in this book is a plus. It was unexpectedly good. I expected the 3 kids to be annoying, but no, they were so adorable. And then there was Ian. I loved him. Every single character in this book is very lovable. Before reading it, I thought maybe it's gonna be weird, but no, this found family, the found family trope in The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, that's the highlight, that's just shown. This book has many of the well-loved tropes. There's found family, which to me was the brightest of all. It does have cozy vibes, practical magic, grumpy sunshine romance. What else could you want? Oh, and did I mention Cersei, the golden retriever? Yeah, that's just the best part. I really enjoyed the whole story. I liked the romance, and I liked the social commentary it had. I liked that it acknowledged mental health and loneliness, those themes. It was there, and the characters were of course perfect. But I still gave this book a 3.5. I wanted to give it at least a 4, but unfortunately it didn't surpass the point of 3.5 for me. I don't know exactly, but I think the problem with this book was the execution, not the story. You know, not the events of the story. I think she did a lot more telling than showing. Maybe not always, but I felt that throughout the pages because I could see the scenes. I could see them, and once you see that kind of things, you can't forget about it. And it's there until the end of the story. I'm not saying it's bad. Maybe if I read this book 10 years ago, I wouldn't even notice these kind of things. But in my reading journey right now, I can see that, I can feel it, and it takes away a little bit of the enjoyment. But to be fair, there's nothing annoying about this book. There's nothing in the story, in the plot, in the characters, in their arcs. There's nothing annoying me. In the magic system, even though the magic system is very simple, but that's to be expected of this kind of book. But there's nothing wrong with this book. It's just the way it is written. It's not my cup of tea. Maybe that was it. I don't know. I do recommend it if you think the story's interesting to you, if you're not picky like I am. And of course, have in mind that there's Ian, the precious kids, and the dog. Okay, so that was all the books I read in the month of June. I enjoyed my time. I think it was a good reading month, even though I didn't get to read as much as I wanted to. I did manage to finish my planned TBR, so that's a good thing. Alright guys, so that was it for June wrap up. Tell me in the comment section if you read any of these books, if you have more recommendations for me. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!